Now we're good.
Great friend, oftentimes contributor to the show. We'll get into this women's preview in a second. A quick thank you to the presenting sponsor of this show, Brooks. One cool today. Call out your name at we'll call out one person's name in the chat at some point later in the show. If we call out your name, you have won a pair of the shoes. Shoot me an email, finn@singletrack.run, and we will get your details. You'll have a Cascadia 18 arriving in early July. With that, let's get into the show. Corrine, how are you doing? This has been a busy past couple days.
It's been really, really busy. We're on what day? I don't even know. 5, I think.
Day Tuesday.
In a row. Day Tuesday. It is Tuesday. No, Finn, I just want to say I met your wife recently and I apologized to her because I was like, just so you know, I'm the person who like listens to the podcast and then live tweets my reactions directly to Finn's inbox via text. And I was like, Finn must know every time I listen because it's just like a 90-minute text thread where I'm like, actually, have you considered? So I apologized to your wife recently when I got to meet her.
Well, it's deeply appreciated because I always learn a ton, and it's good to know that at least one person is listening besides me and Brett doing a run back through. One more thing. I had to change shirts. Wardrobe change for this show. I was wearing a sweatshirt, but I realized this is kind of a momentous episode. I put on my Courtney triple shirt in memoriam. Yeah, we got to get into it. Top storylines. That's our first thing I want to talk about. For me, the one that sticks out is, and I was talking with Mike McMonagle in the background about this, the women's Masters race. And if we're on course record alert for the women's Masters race, like
unanimous top storyline.
We'll talk about Corrine. What makes you excited about this?
I feel like I'm going to use the on-off switch on this mic as a fidget spinner, so I apologize in advance if my audio just cuts out. But I am really excited about the Masters women's race. This has been, I think, the top storyline on the women's field that I've picked out as well. But there are other storylines that we can definitely talk about that are equally exciting and important. But yeah, you've got the returning Open Masters record holder. So the 40 to 45 record holder plus the Open Masters holder in Ragnar de Botts in 1741, which she ran in impressive fashion. Ida Nilsson did not know last year that she was that close to the Masters record, nor did her pacer Tim Tollefson. You've got Ida Nilsson. Boo, Tim. So we've got Ida Nilsson back as well, but then you've got the likes of Esther Chillog, Heather Jackson, Emily Schmitz. If Devin
Esther 40?
Yes.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure Esther Chillog is in the mix.
30s, like 38, 39. But I know like Lauren Puretz.
Oh, she might still be 39.
Heather Jackson, Emily Schmitz.
Ultrasound of doing me dirty.
Yeah, I know. But
yes, a very, very solid. I guess Esther falls into the other category that I really love about this race, the moms in the race, because the moms going for top 10 and podium spots is very deep as well. But yeah, the Masters record on the line is, I think it's going to go down. I mean, 10th place last year, we'll talk about this more, was 90 minutes faster than ever before and something like 17:30. That's 10 minutes faster than the women's Masters course record. I have to imagine that, yeah, we've got a number of women chomping at the bit there.
I think we're going to see a scenario where multiple people go under the old Masters course record, kind of like how we saw multiple women go under the old course record last year.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's the who's who of the 40 to 45-year-old women racing this weekend. And it's crazy because I don't like, Ida Nilsson is 43. I don't know how or when that happened, but it also like, I'm sitting here at 30, like, fairly freshly 34. And I'm like, that's really exciting to be like, I talked about this a little bit yesterday. I want to come back to Western States eventually. And the idea of being faster as a master.
Master.
And like knowing that that's like a real possibility is incredible. Like to be sitting here and be like, oh, my fastest days aren't behind me. Like I can have a family and then rock it as like a 43, 44, 45-year-old. Megan Canfield was like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, Diana, the president of the board, has also run some stellar times as a 60-year-old. So I feel like the Masters record is going down and it's just a matter of who's getting the top honor and how many of them are going under that previous course record.
Why do you think we're seeing like such a like better master? Like usually it's like one person each year that's going to take it. Like it seems like every year we see more and more people over 40 continuing to run great. Is that just a...
It's actually interesting because I feel like it's mostly the women's field because I feel like for the first time ever, the men's Masters group is actually kind of weak. It's just Tyler, which is also very exciting. But I do think that we're seeing this resurgence or better support probably on the women's side in general. So not all, but a number of those women in that category and in the top 10 are mothers who have come back to the sport. Western States now has a lifetime deferral policy, a pregnancy deferral policy, which is amazing. Kind of building off of UTMB's like 5-year deferral policy. That's, hard work done by people like Caitlin Gerben and Esther Chillog and Sophie Powers, making that a reality for these women. So I think it's probably, there's better support for the women in the field than ever before. They have legitimate running careers now. Maybe that wasn't available to them when they were in their 30s. And now they're here, kind of quote unquote in their prime. And that is, to me, very exciting. And I think historically the men just have had better support. And I've got to imagine that funding is trickling, not down, maybe buoying everyone up to this level.
We're 10 minutes in and we haven't mentioned Katie Scheide's name yet. Or maybe we did.
This is a record.
Briefly. This is a record. This is wild. Women's preview, no mention of Katie Scheide in the first 10 minutes.
We're going to get trolled for that.
What is this, Drew Holman, Roy voting?
I'm just here to talk about how fun the North Face kit color is. I love the pink and purple.
Oh my gosh, yes.
There's some good kits this year.
Yeah, I'm really excited. The new On kits are we're actually gonna be able to identify people in the live broadcast, I think, really quickly.
Yeah, that's actually a huge plus.
Brett's like, thank goodness.
I know.
Let's talk about Katie though.
Okay.
I was looking back at last year's top 10 times, the splits, the differences between Courtney's finish, Katie's finish, and then the rest of the field. I didn't realize that Esther was only 24, 25 minutes back of Katie. It was closer than I remembered it.
Yeah, and then you got to also remember that there was a pack there. Courtney and Katie were off the front, and then Courtney was off the front, and then Katie was kind of in no man's land, no woman's land, so to speak, really just kind of moving her way up through kind of the men that were falling apart at that point. And then there was a pack of women behind her, going down to the river and coming out up towards Green Gate. Esther was with Katie Asmuth, Keely Henninger before she fell and dislocated her shoulder. There was Emily Hawgood. There was a pack of women really pushing each other. I know that Helen Mina Faulkner was lying to both Katie Asmuth and Esther Chillog during this section, telling them that the women behind them were gaining on them. They were pushing really, really hard. I mean, Esther is phenomenally talented. I'm really excited to see her back this year. But you're right. Katie ran superbly fast. She ran under Ellie's time. She dropped her pacer, Topher Gaylord, on her way to the finish line. He did eventually make it to the finish, and we all gave him a big round of applause when he finally got there. But what Katie did by herself was really impressive, but I'm curious if there's any women that can stick with her early this year. I think we could see a pack of women run really, really fast.
We talked about this a little bit in the men's preview yesterday, where it almost seems somewhat certain, Jim's probably going to dictate the first part of the race. The way we've seen Katie's racing this year, it wouldn't be a shock at all to see her be the one, leading potentially up over the escarpment, especially through the high country. And then the question is who's going to be the one that is not going to give her an inch? Maybe more than one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a number of really fast women in this field. We've got to mention that there are 3 Chinese athletes in the women's field who are incredibly talented, but maybe untested here, including Chen Lin, for example, who won Doyenthanon and then turned around and won Hong Kong 100K in short order. Fu Zhao from the Hoka team, I think, has a real chance of making a big splash here. You've got rookies like Ingvild Kaspersen, who do have the leg speed to potentially be a threat and contender. We know that Heather Jackson, without snow in the high country, is Heather a person that goes out and sticks with Katie?
I don't see why not.
Why not?
Yeah.
I think the snow was really the big... When I knew that there was going to be snow in the high country, I was like, okay, not Heather Jackson's year. We've seen Heather run incredibly aggressively at the front. Ragna de Botts is generally known for running very aggressively very early. I don't know what Ragna we're getting this year, if we're getting 100% Ragna, if we're getting an 80% Ragna. I know that she was injured earlier this year, and I don't know what that looked like exactly. But I do think that there are a number of women who could be fast enough to stick with Katie early, but I do think Katie's probably going to be the one dictating her own race. She doesn't need any... I mean, we asked her afterwards, oh, did it make you feel more comfortable knowing that Courtney was out there with you? Knowing that you weren't alone, that you weren't going too fast? And she's like, yeah, I mean, I guess so, but also I just thought that we were running completely fine. And so it's I don't think she really cares what the other women are doing because she is really, really focused on her own race. And I think some of the debutantes or newer runners to Western states might not have that. It's not focus, but it's like a quiet confidence that Katie runs with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some people that compete against themselves, and then there's others that fuel better racing other people. Katie's very much seems like she's great at. There could be 0 other people in the race,
and she could time trial this.
Yeah,
she could pull a Pau Capel and time trial Western States by herself, and I still think run a phenomenal time. I don't think she needs the racing aspect to get the most out of herself. I think that we're going to see I'm so curious. Her training has been insane. I know that you've probably been stalking her Strava extensively.
Strava alerts.
Yeah, her volume has been next level. I have to imagine it's akin to what Courtney does. Courtney's just forever Strava dark, much to our chagrin.
I know.
But I think that that's probably what it is, right? Like they're taking a really big swing here. Is it sustainable for the long haul? I don't know.
Might be now. We were talking about that the other day. It's like,
if this is all you do, right?
Yeah,
if this is your job. The shoes are helpful.
Yeah, like and the nutrition. It's like people aren't necessarily running more than they were a decade ago. Mm-hmm. They're just doing it in a much more sustainable way with like easier easy days, harder hard days, eating food, way better gear, like drinking water.
Yeah, actually having water on you.
Everyone was perpetually underhydrated in 2010.
I still am.
Exactly.
If we're being
you're still recovering
honest.
from it.
But I do think that, Katie takes her confidence from training. I think it's pretty next level. I think it's not that dissimilar from what we've seen in the past. I think the big difference actually is that I think we historically over-raced in the past. Mm-hmm. I think that was the big killing machine of many a talented ultra runner was not the overtraining or under recovery aspect. I think it was the over racing, the doing 400, 500, 600s in a year, the racing, incredibly frequently, because I do think that while training loads that Katie has been putting together, we're talking 120, 130 mile weeks. We're talking multiple runs over the marathon distance potentially in her week, solid vert, etc. But we do know from like a physiological and the science side of the sport that actually big training volume isn't really a killer of the endurance athlete. Mm-hmm. It's the racing that we do, the 100-mile effort, the 250-mile efforts that we do, that is like a big toll on our endocrine system, on, athletes develop like, lung pleurisy and weird stuff during
mental
100.
Health.
Yeah. Mental health is a huge thing. So I think that, we're definitely maybe not training anything more crazy. Yeah. It's better supported. Both like literally supported from sponsors, but also from like the gear, the nutrition, and then like she doesn't race a ton, right? Like she hasn't raced a ton. Last year she did, the coastal challenge, and then that incredibly fast like 80K that was way under the radar. Yeah. In like 6 something that was disgustingly fast, and she was like, "I'm not a fast runner," and I'm like, "I'm pretty sure you are." Lies. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Eco Challenge race was very fast, and then I think this year, the Canyons performance was kind of her big race effort.
Yeah. What did you think about her choice to run the Canyons 100K, not too long ago, and absolutely blast it?
Yeah, I think that like in my mind is indicative of her racing style, right? Like it didn't matter that she was already in the race. It didn't matter that she was the favorite. She was going to go do Katie things. But I do think that honestly, I think it'd just be boring to go do that. But she's such like a professional, right? That she's like, I want to get a big, hard, long supported effort in on the course. And in my mind, I'm like, that's boring. Like just like mentally like being like, cool, I'm going to go repeat on this thing versus doing something that's different but similar. But that's Katie though. She's like such a dialed professional that it doesn't surprise me at all that was the decision that was made.
Yeah. We have a segment that we were going to do later in the show, Good Call, Bad Call. But I think we're touching on a couple of really good ones here. The first one being like the push in volume that Katie is demonstrating. And then should people hang with Katie early? Like, should they keep her in contact? Especially with the stats we're seeing from Aid Station Fireball saying that, like, if you do want to run a certain type of race and have a certain type of result, whether it's a podium type race, a victory, a top 10, you have to stay in a certain amount of contact. Yeah. can somebody not stay in contact with Katie and like hope that the race still comes back to them? Or if they're going to try to win this race, they have to be there from the gun?
Not with the current not with the current temperature forecast, I think. I think if we were going to get a really hot day, I think that you could maybe you could gamble a bit more and say, hey, I'm going to let Katie go. And like, maybe it's not going to mean I might not win, but the podium is still probably in contention, because there are going to be people that go with Katie and do crumble potentially. If Katie doesn't crumble, you know, is that the Chinese athletes, someone like Heather or Ingvild, in particularly like the debutantes in the field, right, who go out hard, are they going to come back? I think on a hot year, you could play that gamble. I think in a year where like the temps are looking.
Yeah, what's your take on the weather for this year as of right now?
I feel like it's confusing. There's like rain in the forecast right now. Not for Saturday, but for like today currently. I don't think the canyons are preheating quite as much as I was hoping for. I mean, I want it to be categorically awful. Yeah. I want to be sweating on the track. I want to be uncomfortable in the commentating booth, because I know that that's just like my favorite race conditions. And I love that it's not just a fitness test. It's like an execution test. And I'm biased. I am personally that type of athlete. So I'm more jealous. Like the cool years. I don't want that. No, thank you. Next. I want the furnace. And so I appreciate watching that. And I think it makes a more interesting race as well. It's not just a straight up fitness test. I think more things can go wrong. I think you can mess up your execution, even though we've gotten a lot better at like dealing with the heat, right? Like there's no excuse to not have a good heat mitigation plan. And even if it's only quote 89 degrees or 88 degrees in Auburn, you still have to execute on your plan, but it's not as mission critical as when it's 104 at the track, for example. Like the first year I ran Western States in 2018, it was like 102 at the river when I came through. Like that's a good oven roasting kind of day. Yeah. So I think that it's like, if it's cool, I think you got to stick your nose out there a bit more. If it's going to be, if the temperatures change and it's looking maybe a little bit hotter, you can maybe moderate it. But I think if you want the podium, I think at this point you kind of have to stick your nose in it. I think if you want a top 10, there is room to not move into 10th until the river type of thing. Leah's done that a number of years in a row. That's what I did both my years as well, is that I went hunting from Forest Hill to the river, would move into like 11th or 10th at the river basically, and then move up another spot or two between there and the finish, running out of distance generally. I want to go back and do it more aggressively. But I think that's the thing. I think if you're playing for top 10, different ball game than playing for top 3.
And I wanted to ask this to both of you, because you're both coaches. Do you think that what Katie's doing from a training standpoint, a volume standpoint, is that going to be influential in women's professional running for years to come? Is it sort of like just a kind of a moment in the sport? Like, how do you see this playing out?
Who's the Canadian guy that was like tripling in the marathon?
Cam Levins.
And I was kind of happy that didn't work out very well. Part of me like wants, obviously here's the thing. I'm biased towards everyone in the field. Like truly, like these are my friends, my colleagues, my literal teammates, my training partners. I want them all to succeed. I am biased towards everyone. So it's really hard to root against anyone. Part of me does really want, the 65 mile a week Rachel Drake, the like 60 to 80 mile a week Leah Yingling, etc., to like perform really, really, really well and not have the 130 mile a week have to be the thing. Because I think that to pull that off, you really have to be in the Katie Schide mindset where this is all you're doing. And there are very few of us in the sport where that is all we are doing, either by choice, because we like the other things we do in our lives. Like Rachel loves being a mom. Rachel loves being a doctor. Like that's not going to change. Like that is part of her running. But because of that, like there is a limit to how much she can train. And so I don't want her to have to be less successful by default. And so I'm kind of like, I don't want it to work, but I want it. I also love Katie. So
yeah,
you're pulling at my heartstrings.
Yeah, I've definitely thought about this a lot too. And I think one of the advantages that Katie has, like you said, is getting to do this sport full time. Like when you truly do have all 24 hours of the day to devote to being a professional runner, it makes running 120 miles a week a lot easier. I mean, it's never easy, but it's much more sustainable. I love seeing I almost call them like multi-sport athletes, because like mom, work, running. That's a multi-sport athlete. Like, I love seeing the success out of the multi-sport athlete, but I think we are, as the sport grows, more money comes in the sport, more opportunity comes about. I believe we are going to see more training styles like, Katie and Courtney. I mean, we're always speculating on Courtney, but
we know that she's putting big numbers.
It's a full-time job for Courtney too.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to see more of those.
But there will be professional athletes like where that won't work for them.
Yeah.
Also, and I think it is really leaning in and being confident and understanding what works for you. And there are different seasons where it's like, this season you might only be a 60 mile a week kind of person, and maybe your peak week's an 80 mile an hour. Like I keep saying mile an hour. That's not going to help
80
anyone.
80 mile an hour week.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean?
Do you see the floor though for like minimum viable workload increasing as women's professional running gets more competitive and more deep?
Might have to add some cross training to low mileage.
Yeah.
The volume in terms of hours per week, that floor might go up.
I think the hours per week is going to go up, but you're going to see people who are successful, I think, on really high quality sessions, slightly lower volume, maybe more of a cross training hybrid athlete. You got people like Heather Jackson, right, who are doing, she has two coaches that work collaboratively, one for the bike and one for running. And I think that's really cool that they are working collaboratively to get her to this place and really dial in being able to be a really good gravel athlete on the bike and run really well. Like, are we going to see Heather Jackson be top 5 at Unbound and Western States this year?
What a double.
That is next level. So I do think that, honestly, I think that we've got a lot to learn from an athlete like Heather Jackson for athletes who might not be able to run 100, 120 miles and once again, hours a week, miles an hour. But I do think that I can learn from that, coming back from big pelvic stress fractures. My floor has definitely gone down as far as what's sustainable for me physically. And I've definitely been looking towards Heather Jackson to be cool. I can run off the bike. I love gravel cycling, etc. I can run off the bike. I can do a trainer session and get a run in and get some of that stimulus that is very different, but at the same time allows me to maybe not have to do back-to-back long runs, for example. So I do think that there is room for different approaches, but I do think you're right. The floor of 10 hours a week is going to go up to 15 or going to go up to 20 as we continue to progress.
Yeah, I know we're going a little bit into the weeds on coaching science stuff.
No, go.
But well, one of the cool things that's going in favor of the lower mileage, higher quality athlete is the fueling revolution is pushing out that legs blow up, dynamite going off sort of level where it always, back in the day it was well, if you were able to survive 130, 140 miles a week, you would be able to run a 100 miler at such a lower effort that even if you're under fueling, you're just going to fat burning. But the level of racing is so high now and the level of fueling is so high now that that's almost leveling the fields.
We're no longer in surviving as thriving. You really have to just be thriving.
Yeah. There's no one in the top 10 this year, men's or women's race, that's still racing off of soup broth after the river.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think you can get away with being I'm on a Coca-Cola diet only after the river. I still think you have to be putting in something more substantial.
You got to be dumping gels into your Coke bottles.
Yeah, exactly.
Cola flavored gel in your cola bottles.
That's pretty next level. Get at us. Sponsors.
We did a Kiss Kill Mary segment yesterday in the men's preview show, and high carb fueling was one of them.
It was, we'll just say it was Kiss Kill Mary.
Okay. High
carb fueling, topical cooling, trail super shoes.
Oh my goodness.
And this is coming from, you've run in my opinion, the best trail super shoe on the market right now. So that was my Kiss Kill Mary. It's kind of difficult.
That is brutal.
And we're talking specific to
what
the
are you
Western States course.
What am I marrying? Topical cooling, I think.
That's what I said.
That's been the majority for the Mary.
I just think that you can fuel so much better if you're getting that cooling down. Oh man, but the Schide, who am I kissing?
I killed super shoes.
I'm leaning that direction, but I've also run in these shoes a lot and I really like them. Oh man. I feel like we broke the internet here. What am I kissing? I think I am going to kiss fueling and kill the super shoe.
We were the same.
Okay.
I know, as much as I wanted to save the super shoe, I think the high
killing
carb
it.
fueling, like the time
It's
I'm
so much more
gaining from
beneficial.
high carb fueling, yeah. At least as of right
Yeah,
now.
can I just put on a road flat or something later? It's not a super shoe.
It's not? Oh, because it's
No,
not a
yeah,
super shoe.
yeah, like just like a Boston, you know.
Alpha flies. Forest Hill to the finish.
Done. Jupiter's going to be in something like that for sure.
Yeah.
I
I'm
know.
curious because he signed with Kraft.
Yeah, and okay, I heard you guys talk about that on the podcast. I'm pretty sure, and I was like, dude, that happened a long time ago.
What?
Like
Oh,
it was
the
like
Kraft.
yeah, like right after Black Canyon, he
Yeah,
put
it
up a
wasn't
post on
before,
Kraft.
after Black
Yeah.
Canyon.
Okay, sorry, we digress.
Well,
So
and I know we're going to be talking about Katie a lot this episode, but Mike brought up something really interesting in the chat. There's probably a lot of athletes, at least several in the women's race, who are not intimidated by Katie. People like Esther, Rachel, Ida, Fu Zhao, etc.
mhm.
And I guess my question off that is, how much perception around Katie changed, not after Western States last year, but this race at Canyons? Like, was that a step function better performance, and does that redefine what she can do in this race?
I mean, the thing is that list of women like weren't on the start line with her there, and you can't win a race you didn't run, you know? So I do think that for those women, and honestly, Katie's coach has told me this straight up, that Katie's not any more talented than any of the women out there. It's just that she's a professional and she checks all the little boxes.
Volume.
The volume,
That's one of the
little
boxes.
things, the body work, the mental stuff, her crew, like the stuff that she puts together for her crew is so dialed. Like, I don't think Katie is necessarily physically more talented than any of those women, but I also like want to stress that anyone getting on the start line in that elite field in particular, you have to think to yourself, like, it's anyone's day. And if it's anyone's day, it's also your day. And I think that's a big deal. Like, you're not counting anyone out. Like, I'm not overlooking anyone. I'm not saying anyone, I'm not saying Lottie Brinks can't do it. I'm not saying that Anna Cassius can't do it, etc. Like, I'm not overlooking anyone, because if I'm not overlooking anyone, I'm not overlooking myself. And so you have to come in with that confidence, right? You've got to be that Ingebrigtsen, you know, type of personality on the trail. Don't be mean to your competition, but like, I think that you've got to come in thinking that you've got a shot.
Yeah.
You know, and so Katie is human. She puts her shorts on like the rest of us do every morning, like one leg at a time.
Over the top of her head.
Over the top of her head. She jumps
I
into
should
them.
change how I dress.
Yeah.
One
No, but
leg.
so this happened for a long time in skiing, for example, where we were like, why can't U.S. women in cross country skiing like compete with the Norwegians and the Swedes? And our coaches kept telling us they put their pants on the same way you guys do in the morning, like one leg at a time. And it's like, okay, like it's recognizing that they're not this like superhuman, that they don't have a superpower that you don't have, etc. Is Katie making her way towards her Courtney DeWalter era, where she is a 90% Katie is still head and shoulders better than everyone else? Maybe this Western States will show that.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's one of those situations where if you're going on the start line, everyone's hunting for a cougar.
That's why I was so curious about like all of the things that Katie's doing in training to be successful. Like you said, her coach is saying it's not necessarily inherent talent, it's strategy, it's work, and it's doing all the little things. And I'm wondering if people are going to pick up on that and say, I want to do that too.
I feel that way. And I feel like being friends with the likes of Katie Schide, Abby Hall, Danny Moreno, MK Sullivan, etc., the Hemmings, like like when you're surrounded by people like this, where you're watching them succeed, it sure as shit, am I allowed to say that?
I think so.
Makes me
Not my
We
channel.
get one per.
okay. Well, that was it. Sorry, and it was like kind of like a weak one too.
No, I think you get unlimited shit on this channel.
I muttered it. Was that it makes me want to try harder. It makes me think. I talked to Rachel Drake about this. I talked to Leah about this, that like caring is cool. And like Katie Scheid and Abby Hall and Danny Moreno and all these women are bringing that back in a big way, where like caring is cool. We are allowed to care immensely about our training. We are allowed to prioritize it. I think that's what you're seeing in the women's field across the board. I think that we're seeing that in Europe as well, with like Audrey Tanguy and Blondine Hirondelle, et cetera. Like, people are really, really stepping up their game, and caring is very much cool. So I do think you're going to see more women say, you know what, I'm actually going to fire myself from one of my jobs, from one of my tasks. I'm personally working on firing myself slowly while also adding more things to my plate. But to open up, to like actually like protect time in my day to like get that double in or go to the gym. And like I'm feeling that. And if I'm feeling that as like a mostly media personality / sort of trying to be a runner, I do think that we're going to see that across the women's professional field.
There's a name that I feel like should be thrown into this conversation of like who probably will roll the dice, gluing themselves as front. Someone who's done it before in the past, as Emily Hawgood. Like she's like,
going for her 4th top 10 in a row, and every year she's gotten a little bit better here.
Yeah, and like she went out with Ruth last year and was like, "Was that because you were trying to race her?" And she's like, "No, like that's just like how it ended up being."
But she also did it the year before, because the year before, her and Keely and Ruth came into Devil's Thumb together, and then this past year she held onto Ruth for even like, or it was like, it's like every year it's been like a little bit. She's putting her like self in it a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and I do think that she like is definitely not under the radar, but because she is not maybe as out there, I feel like, as other runners, and she's such a steady Eddie, that it's like easy to kind of like forget about her in the field. But she has as much, if not more, experience than anyone else in the women's field at this race. And she's probably the last person ever that could potentially do 10 top 10s in a row, going for number 4 now. Like Ian Sharman couldn't even pull that off. He missed on year 9, I think. So I think that Emily Hawgood's not quitting this race until she gets it right. Which is terrifying. She runs on the course a lot. She lives just down the hill. She's really dialed into this race.
Yeah, it's like her consistency at this race almost writes off her aggressive racing style that she's had, because usually they don't go together.
And then her CCC was so good last year. I think that we've forgotten how fast she is because she's done like the Western States to UTMB double year after year. And I think this past year, her doing the Western States to CCC double and then like nailing it. In the field of Emily's, there were literally 4 Emilys at one point, and we're like, well, we don't know who's going to be next, but it's going to be an Emily. It's Emily's or Emily Hawgood or Emily Forsberg. It was kind of a wild CCC women's race, but that I think showed exactly how good she is to pull off that at CCC. And I think that if we're getting that Emily on Saturday, that's a person who I think is also willing to stick her nose in it really early. Yep,
for sure.
Before we get totally into field analysis, overhead, is this the deepest women's field ever?
Mike, is this the deepest women's field ever? Have you run your confidence intervals yet?
I haven't, but subjectively, I think it's on par with last year or a little more competitive.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the trend, right? Is that we see that in the finishing times, where every year since 2018, it's been the fastest 10th place finisher ever. Every year, independent of conditions, hot year, cold year, it's been inching up. And then last year took a big chunk off of it, going from 19 something to 18, with unfortunately, our 10th place athlete is not returning due to injury. But I do think we've got 6, I think, of the top 10 returning. We've got absolutely insanely talented golden ticket, winners in there. We didn't have anyone come out of the lottery, I think, this year, but we did end up with Fujao on the sponsor spot from Hoka.
Kelly Angel's
deferral.
deferral.
Well, Chill World Tour to pregnancy deferral.
To COVID to
pregnancy
COVID,
deferral.
To pregnancy deferral.
Yeah.
What a ride.
It's like a 8th year NCAA senior.
Yeah,
type,
exactly. She's been redshirting for a second.
Yeah, like medical redshirt, COVID redshirt.
Yeah,
redshirt.
so she's back here, and I think that's very, very exciting. Casey Lichtag, who is going for her 10th finish in a row. She's got a buckle of every color.
Yep.
She'll be getting her fourth different buckle this year, because she'll be getting her 1,000 mile buckle. She's got a winner's buckle, a silver buckle, and a bronze buckle. She'll be looking for her 1,000 mile buckle this year. She was 12th last year. Since her win and since having a near golden hour finish, she's also had a 3rd place finish. So, I mean, Casey Lichtag, so I missed her when I said Emily Hawgood had the most experience in the women's field. Casey Lichtag.
You like her training right now?
Have you seen her training?
It's
on
so
Strava
consistent.
We're looking at 6 years ago Casey training.
That's scary.
It's so much better than anything she's done in the last 3 years, which have all been just outside of the top 10 performances. Looking at Casey's training, then throwing it back to 2016, the year she won, it's like it's as good or better than it was.
And you've got to remember her 12th place time last year was just stupid fast.
Yeah,
Like
and
those
that
times
was-
used to be good for third. You
and
know,
that was coming off of a surgery and some injuries and some hamstring problems and kind of getting it together. There was like this past 12 months, Casey's just been doing Casey things around Lake Zorinsky.
every
We're
day.
looking
Every day.
130, 140 miles a week, like average for the last 10 weeks.
Oh, Casey's here to mess things up for people.
Yeah, everyone.
That's what I'm
I
feeling.
think Casey's getting written off by a ton of people because it's like, oh, she, got in because she's going for her 10th finish. You don't want to mess that up. Casey can absolutely race as hard as she wants. It could go sideways. She will still
she'll
finish.
finish.
She'll
She'll as I'm pretty sure it was Stephanie Case who was like the year that it was a year that everyone had a really hard time, but Stephanie Case was like, get in the boat, Casey.
Mhm.
Like, get out of here. We're not sitting at Rucky Chucky any longer. Like, get in the boat. And she did. She made it to the finish. So
Last year, I said my conspiracy theory. I was like, okay, like last year, Casey's going to run very conservatively to secure the 9th year finish, and then go full steam ahead for year 10 to just try and win the whole thing on the 10th year.
wouldn't that be insane?
How cool would that be?
That
to
would
just
be.
boom.
That
Like,
would be
here's
next
your
level.
1,000-mile buckle, and here's a Cougar trophy.
But honestly, well, she'd get the winner buckle too, wouldn't she?
oh yeah, that's like
Because they get a special buckle.
that's a
She can't
that's
carry
a
all
whole,
that.
Has that ever happened before? Has anyone ever won Western States on their 10th running of it? No.
There's no way.
Ann Trayson? Ann, it would be Ann or Tim Tweetmeyer.
Oh goodness!
Maybe.
Someone hit us up in the chat. Tell us what we're doing wrong.
Leah, Aid Station Fireball standing right behind us.
And he's
have the
speculating with the rest of us. We have
Yeah.
the source.
We have the
The
source.
source code.
Yeah, so we'll circle back to that.
But so it's like you can't forget about Casey.
Mhm.
Like she could very well mess up someone's day. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see her finish top 5.
Yep.
I am always
Pixie Ninja.
rooting for these like massive breakthrough overall field moments. Like I feel like Black Canyon 2 years ago was one of those. And my bold prediction for this race is that the entire women's top 10 is running under 1750. Is that insane?
What was it last year?
Oh,
wait, I have
it was
that tab
1809,
up.
I
It
think,
was
because Jenny
low.
Quilty.
It wasn't Jenny Quilty. Jenny Quilty just missed.
Missed.
It
was
was
Meg Morgan.
it was Meg Morgan.
1810.
18. Yeah.
11.
1811.
And 32
Okay.
seconds.
Because I remember the year before, it was also really fast, and I walked up to Anne Marie Madden, who finished 11th
Mm-hmm.
in 2022, and I said, "Congratulations on being the fastest ever 11th place finisher."
Yeah.
Like, I am so sorry.
Truth.
So I feel like that was Casey last year. Like, what did Casey run for 12th last year?
1947.
Okay,
There was
so
actually there was a gap.
There's a
after
gap
10,
between 10. Yeah.
But gosh, last year was
1947 could have podiumed like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year was just one of those
Yeah,
all the
2017. It would have
planets-
podiumed in
2017.
2017.
all the planets aligned last year. I feel like we're getting like half the planets aligning this year, but the level of competition and professionalism has increased. So
Yeah, I don't know.
That
Not having
almost
snow in the high
evens.
country and having not cool but mild-ish temps, I think that we're going to see fast
Mhm.
racing from the women's side
yeah,
and men's side, but we're not here to talk about them.
no, we're not.
A 20-minute jump, is that reasonable to think that we could see a 20-minute jump in the collective top 10?
I think with this field,
Okay.
I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, and while it's not as cool as last year, it's like we said, it's like only like medium heat this year, and right now, like for the whole rest of the week, the lows are supposed to stay pretty low.
I also think that like they had navigation issues in the high country last year. Like everyone kept kind of like waddling in the wrong directions.
It was flag to flag for 25 miles.
Yeah, it was mentally exhausting because you had to like work together
Yeah.
to like find that people were falling. Like I think them being able to run smooth for the first 50K and just like be a bit more relaxed from the gun, still fast,
Yeah.
but relaxed. Like you get to like kind of turn your brain off a little bit. Like I think that we could see, and we even saw people like PR, getting to Robinson's Flat still by like 30 minutes last year in the snow, just because they were pushing, they were being more aggressive.
Mhm.
I think if you got people with that more aggressive mindset this year, plus no snow, I think we're gonna see fast times to Robinson, and just like what happens in the canyons.
Yeah, it's like who can get to Robinson fast without burning that many matches and then still run a similar tempo to as last year for the rest of the race.
Agreed.
Then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you just get your
It's free
15 minutes
time.
faster. Yeah.
It's free time.
looking at last year's like 10 through 15, it's amazing that so many women in the top 10 ran under 18. Then there was sort of like a dead zone between 18 and 20 hours. It's kind of like the sub 24 hour finish where it's like people running. There's very few people running like between like 24 and 25 hours on the States course. It's either like you get your silver buckle or like you're finishing closer to the golden hour.
Yeah.
Really interesting to me.
Yeah, that 20-hour mark. I couldn't crack it. I ran in 2 opposite years. One was pretty darn hot. One was pretty darn cool. And I ran like 2001 and 2002 because I'm
You ran in
idiot.
2018, right?
Yeah.
We were all there in
all
2018.
What did you run?
I ran like 21 and change.
Huh.
Damn it. I was the slowest. I was 20.
Actually, I know that because I looked at your
22,
splits
45.
recently because I've got a guy who we're basing some 24-hour splits on.
Yeah.
We're not using your splits.
No, don't use mine.
No, we're using Diana's splits.
I was keying off like 19
because
hours.
Diana ran just under 24 hours that year
Okay.
as a
yeah.
60-year-old.
Yeah.
So we're
that's
using
pretty
her
amazing.
splits for the 24-hour mark.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so 2018 Western States Battle of the Media People.
Corrine wins.
Here you go.
It's surprisingly very heavy.
Oh, I've seen people try to hold it at the podium ceremony. That does not surprise me.
Yeah, why do you think Hal has such big muscles?
It's just been flexing with it every day.
Yep.
In the chat, Mike says snow in the first 20 last year also stopped people from going out too hard and may have led to fewer blowups.
I do think that we saw less attrition last year, and part of me is wondering, does that attrition come down to the heat? Does it come down to us using better cooling strategies? Does it come down to us using better fueling strategies? How much of that is like racing a smart first 50K versus kind of multifactorial, all those things lining up for the perfect day. I do think that there are some people who probably benefited from not going out too fast in that first 50K, but I just think that having that consistent snow, it worked muscles differently. It was mentally, like I keep saying, it was mentally tiring for a lot of folks. I do think that, you can definitely make bigger mistakes maybe early, but I thought last year people pushed themselves too hard early, that's where they were going to make a lot of like unnecessary mistakes in the snow early on.
Yeah, last year the advantage went to the mountain athletes in the first 50K.
Yeah.
Like all the high altitude people who are like normally don't get as much heat training, but instead were like
They
running
benefited.
on snow and stuff.
Yeah.
They benefited huge, and we saw some people who were more like not mountain.
Yeah,
trained
Heather
people, like-
Jackson, Camille Herron, etc.
Yeah.
Those people really, really struggled in the snow
Mhm.
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah, so we won't get that this year, which that'll make for a really interesting dynamic to Robinson Flat, just because it'll be more the responsibility of you to cool the jets and not just like open it up on every descent.
Yeah.
We had a segment yesterday called Did You Know, which is stats from Liam Aid Station Fireball, and one of the interesting ones that translated to both the men's and women's field was that of the top 25 male and female runners through Robinson Flat last year, on average over the last 10 years, about 3 to 6 people in that top 25 end up DNFing the race.
And I have always benefited from that. 'Cause
I think that's a low number.
I
I
think
always
I've-
feels
thought that
low
number
to
would
me.
have been higher.
I think
would
I've
think it's
always
higher.
come into Forest Hill like in, I don't know, 20th, 22nd. And then I just I remember watching catch like Amanda Basham, Eo Wang, etc. And I'm like, mine.
Yeah.
Like, you're mine. You're mine. And so that doesn't surprise me. It feels kind of low, but I don't think that we've seen a lot of the attrition hasn't necessarily been fully dropping out. It's just been like having to slog it in.
Who do you see as some of the hunters in the field this year? I mean, I would say Leah is definitely
Obviously.
like the obvious
Queen
hunter.
hunter of the group.
Yeah.
I do think that someone like Emily Schmitz, I think we could see doing some hunting. I
Okay.
think Becca Windell, Lauren Puretz could be doing some hunting. I think they ran pretty smart races at Black Canyon.
Last year, Esther Chilog, she was like
Queen
top
hunter.
hunter.
Yeah.
Curious what her approach will be this year.
Yeah, I wonder if she'll go out more aggressively or not. I haven't gotten to speak to her yet about that. I get to speak to her later today, but kind of curious
Ask
to know.
her that question.
I'll be like, excuse me.
How fast are you going out?
I'm going
on
out hard
Saturday?
this year, but I do think that we'll see, Emily Schmitz in part of that kind of hunting crew. I think Lauren Puretz and Becca Windell out of
Where
the
do you
Black
put
Canyon crew.
Rachel Drake?
I think that she is a very interesting debutante.
Yeah.
Because I would say that, she's definitely learned from Tyler that you can be. I don't think Rachel Drake's going for top 10. I think she's going for a cougar.
I agree.
I don't think she's playing it safe. I don't
if
think
that's the case, you don't really get to be a hunter.
Yeah, no, you are. I think Rachel Drake is putting her nose in it early. I don't think she's waiting for people to
I
make
love that.
mistakes. I think that girl wants a cougar, and I think that she's gotten to witness pace and crew Tyler Green to 2 seconds, a fourth, and like a 12th.
Yeah, I think that was his first one.
Yeah, and that was
2019.
crazy too, because there was like 6 men duking it out for like the back part of the top 10.
Yeah.
I think both golden ticket winners from Black Canyon are going to be aggressive. I think Becca Wendell is going to be a fighter, and I think Rachel's going to be a fighter. Becca, I'm buying a ton of stock in.
I think that Becca ran a really smart race at Black Canyon. She took it out pretty more conservatively maybe than some of the rest of the field, and then when she bridged hard. I do think that, and I know that Lauren Puretz likes to kind of work her way up as well, and she's got some mega leg speed.
Yeah.
So I can see both of those women being threats in the, back 40 miles of the race. I don't know a lot about Giulia Vinco, the Italian athlete who came in from Nice. Unfortunately, Eleanor Davis is another interesting debutante because while she's never raced 100 miles, she did do a winter Bob Graham round. So she's done a 20-ish hour effort. Yeah. She has mega leg speed, but this is her first appearance here. And I don't know how well she does in the heat. I don't know. This will be her first 100 mile. She was in CCC last year and I believe had to drop. And then she went to Nice to try to go after a golden ticket and got it done there, winning that race. But this will be her first official 100 mile race. And I'm just very curious. I don't necessarily see her being conservative. And so I kind of wonder where she'll fall in that bunch. I don't think she'll be in the very front. Pushing the pace with someone like Katie, but I do think that she could be someone that we see kind of in that chase pack, and that chase pack could very well be, Priscilla Forgy, Lottie Brinks, Kareth Arnold, Anna Cassius, these women that we know are very fast. And I know that we're not just supposed to name drop the entire women's field, Finn, so I'm trying to be cognizant of that. But I do think that we're going to see this front pack, the Katie Schide pack. I think we're going to see this kind of like not necessarily conservative, but kind of mixing it up pack. And then I think we're going to have our hunters who we're going to see maybe go over the escarpment a little bit easier, come into Robinson Flat, and those more like kind of standard, we're going for an 18-hour finish times, which sounds crazy to me.
Only 18 hours.
Only 18 hours, because I always based my splits off of like 19 or 19 and a half hours. People are getting faster.
It's just where we're at.
It's where we're at. We can't fight it. And then I think, we're going to see they're going after those 18 and a half hour splits, and they're hoping to make moves in the back 40 miles.
Do you see anybody in this field that is being underestimated or could be like a free trail bracket buster? I guess it kind of falls in line with people that are going to be hunting. They might be the same type of runner.
I mean, I think Fu Zhaozhang is going to get overlooked by a lot of people.
Yeah, well, she's a sponsor spot in too, so I think that's part of it. I think people will maybe miss that nod. She's on our women's elite panel on Thursday. With JJ is going to translate for us. I'm really excited about it.
Oh, sweet.
That'll be really cool. I think it's Emily Hawgood, Leah, Fu Zhao, and I can't remember. There's 4 of us. Esther's not on it. I don't think Katie's on it. Someone else is on it. But it'll be really cool to actually hear from her and do that. But yeah, we've got 3 Chinese women in the field, and I think that we're very Western states, Western bias. I think that those athletes are often overlooked. We don't know how to compare them to the rest of the field, because while they race a lot, they don't race against the Western Europe, the North American audience that frequently. And so it's really hard to conceptualize how fast they are. Tabor Hemming is going to be pacing Lin Chen, who won Doi Inthanon, won Hong Kong 100K. I think she's got very good mountain chops, but I have no idea how she's going to run in the back 60 miles of this.
Yeah.
But it's like she could totally bust up someone's bracket in a big way.
Totally.
So I do think that I really, really hope that we have at least one Chinese woman in the top 10 this year, because then they're coming back next year. I think continuing that momentum is really, really important and critical for the growth of the sport. With no golden ticket at Doi Inthanon this year, I do think that we miss out on those athletes in particular from China. I think getting them to a race like Tarawera or Kianci just doesn't feel very reasonable or as reasonable. And so I do think that we potentially miss out on returning Chinese athletes unless they get on the podium at CCC. So I really hope that we see some Chinese athletes in the women's field, because we saw Shen last year in the men's field get it done. I hope that we've got some Chinese women in the women's top 10 this year, because then we've got Chinese athletes returning for 2025.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess one way that's like easy to look at, Fujiao's success was a 4th at UTMB last year. People can
pretty darn
you
good.
can translate 4th at UTMB to being pretty good at running.
And she was mixing it up too with Katharina Hartmuth and Blondine.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of back and forth in that group that was actually really dynamic, kind of 2 through 4. I do think she got engaged on the finish line as well.
Oh, was that her?
I think
remember
so.
seeing pictures.
Yeah.
I'm
pretty sure that's what happened. And like her and her partner, they met on the start line 2
At
years
the beginning
before.
of the
No,
race.
not that race. Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Whoa.
No, but UTMB has been part of their relationship story, where they met on the start line 2 or 3 years before that.
That's
and
cool.
then he
That is
proposed
pretty
at the
cool.
finish line because people were like, "Really? He's stealing her thunder?" And I'm like, "Well, you guys don't actually realize that they met.
The storm started it.
The storm. They're the whole thing got kicked off
Yeah.
in the starting chute at UTMB. So you can put her on that kind of
Yeah.
okay, we know Katharina Hartmuth and Blondine, pretty talented athletes that I would love to see at a race like Western States.
That would be fun. And last year, Fujiao was 4th in the Broken Arrow 46K. So actually spent time out
Wasn't
here.
she doing the triple last year? The Triple Crown?
If so, that makes the 4th place in the 46K even more impressive.
Yeah.
That must have just missed that. But spent time out here. Got to see just kind of, the American racing culture. It's very different.
Her pacer was 5th in the men's 46K.
This year? Last
yeah,
year?
this year.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Then.
Yeah, he
So,
registered for the race at 6 a.m. that morning.
that's cool. That's cool. So, yeah, one thing I always thought was interesting because, Western States is such a, it takes a village. It's a very crew heavy race. If you don't have a crew, you're losing a lot of time.
Stretching.
For some of the international athletes, the first year at Western States can be a massive learning curve, learning kind of the American style of crewing.
Oh, we've been having conversations in our house about this.
And
trying to
managing,
get organized.
Crewing this course is mayhem, just in terms of the logistics and how it works and navigating the middle of nowhere. This is
Shuttles.
This is very remote.
Yeah.
This course.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a different flavor. Although I walked into a grocery store with Petter Engdahl the other day, and he goes, "I love America."
Yeah.
So I think he is quickly adapting an American mindset.
Has he been to Costco yet?
No, his girlfriend and I really want to take him there. So we're figuring out a Costco trip for Petter after Western States. But I do think it is a big adjustment, right? It's akin to us going over to Europe and just being thrown in the deep end and being like, "Oh my goodness, there's 3,000 people on the start line. Some dude just shoved me into a plant. That's crazy." So I do think that there's a different element here. A lot of the international athletes are relying on American teammates, for example.
Which is smart.
Chris
I think that's a
Hollis
good
is
call.
pacing Esther Chillag, Hoka's Chris
Yeah,
Hollis is
that's
pacing
cool.
Esther to the river before handing her over to Helen Mino.
Good luck, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, Chris, hopefully you've been training. But I do think that they get to rely on the family here of people showing up. So for example, short men's race nod, Petter Engdahl's pacers are Eric LaPuma and Stephen Kirsch, who tried and failed at golden tickets this year. Pretty darn cool. Same
Yeah.
sort of thing going on with Ingvild Kaspersen pacers are Tony McCann and Danny Moreno. Pretty darn cool.
Good pacers.
Good, solid pacers.
We got to talk more about Ingvild.
Mm-hmm.
Stellar athlete.
Could she be competing for the win?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is her debut 100 mile, and I do think that people look at her 2022 season in particular and be like, okay, is she that good? You have to remember that she was trying to finish up being a doctor during that time, so she'd taken a step back from running, from training, and was kind of trying to over race her fitness a bit. She showed up to CCC that year and led, and then kind of completely fell apart. Was at Black Canyon, kind of had a mediocre day there,
Yeah.
etc. Versus this year or last year, you saw her put together that exceptional CCC, and kind of finishing the previous fall with the second at Transvolcania, CCC win, and then that insanely fast 50K at the Swedish UTMB race. It's a 57K that she ran in under 4 hours, I want to say. She's got a good marathon PR. She is incredibly fast. I think that if her crew takes care of her well, she'll be in a good place. She came over after team camp this spring and was in Auburn for a week, 10 days, getting a training camp in, went home, worked some more in the hospital, and then has been in Flagstaff for 2 weeks, apparently just absolutely throwing down in workouts with Ida. So I do
she
think
checks a lot of the Western States boxes.
If she's going to succeed at if someone's going to succeed at Western States as a debutante,
yeah.
Rachel Drake and Ingvild Kaspersen are probably your two debutantes there that have a legitimate shot at walking away with a debut win at Western States. But I do think that it's not 100% given, if that makes sense. I just think that like we've seen people like have to take multiple swings here, particularly more on the men's side, on the women's side. I think Ingvild has as good a shot as being a debutante winner at Western States as maybe anyone else ever has. But it's always hard to execute on your first go. At the same time, I will say there is like an ignorance is bliss scenario when you step up in distance.
That was Tim Tollefson at UTMB.
You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
You don't know how bad it can get. You don't know how painful it can be. You don't know what your expectations are. You don't have any fear associated with the course that many of us have developed over time from being out there. So I do think that there is like this magic of being a debutante at Western States in which like that's a once in a lifetime experience.
That'd be maybe this is a stat for Liam, 8th Station Fireball to crunch, but if you're comparing the men's and the women's fields, is there data that shows, on their first try or earlier on, they sort of cracked the Western States code?
I mean, we have a number of them, right? Kat Bradley, Magda Boulay, etc. Like
was Kat's win her first 100-miler?
Oh, it wasn't. It was not. Steph Howes was, but Kat's was not.
Magda's was.
Magda's was.
Yeah.
Kat got in off of Rio de Lago. Like she didn't have to run a golden ticket to get in. She got one ticket in.
Yeah.
There was a number of years in a row where if you won Rio de Lago, you somehow got in. It felt like the next year.
It was worth 1,000 tickets.
It felt like it was worth 1,000 tickets.
There was no collusion.
Don't quote me
All the
on
conspiracy
that.
theorists out there are signing up for Rio del Lago.
Don't quote me on that. But I do think that there was a number of, I think we've seen it more recently in the women. Adam Peterman was the first male athlete to win on his debut 100 mile in like,
it was since like 1970 something.
Yeah, or early 80s. Like it was a long run of it. So I do think that we've seen it more on the women's side.
Mm-hmm.
Ruth only took 2 years to get it right. Beth passed, like, I feel like,
Beth was like 2 years.
Yeah, so we've had a number of like kind of two and done.
Yeah.
Courtney got it done pretty quickly.
Yeah, so doesn't happen too often, like statistically, to get it on your first try. Not impossible though, but could happen.
I'm here.
Could
for
happen.
It.
I'm here for it. Yep.
We love that uncertainty.
Absolutely here for the try, and that is why we race.
If we're putting rough estimates or boundaries around like people going for the win, people trying to podium, people trying to get into the top 10, how big are those groups? Like if you had to like put a rough estimate on the number of runners aiming for the win, like truly aiming for the win on Saturday, where do you put that at? Like is it 5? Is it 10?
Oof, I think there's probably 5 to 7 women who are truly going for the win.
I had 6, which is in between 5 and 7. Oh yeah.
Hell yeah. We're always on the same page. I think 5 to 7 probably legitimately. I think there's probably some women that are more like I really want the podium type of thing that might race a little bit smarter and end up in that top 5 group. And then, so I think there's like 25 to 26 women at last count that I would consider like in the elite field. I'd say 5 to 7 of them for the win, and then maybe like even distribution between like racing for a top 10 and racing for a top 5.
Here's an interesting Venn diagram that I feel like is like getting
oblong. It's an oblong Venn diagram.
Like the circles there's not as big of a chunk of people in the middle.
Okay.
So it used to be like going for the win and going for the podium, like the group of people going for the podium but not going for the win could land on the podium. Are there so many people who are going for the win this year that anyone who's saying I'm not going for the win, but I'm going for like
risks not making the top 5,
like
or risks not making the top 3 at least.
These 6 say that are maybe going for the win.
Let's say
they can
three
fade
of
enough
them might be totally fine. Then.
Where someone from in the top 5 group, is there even going to be room to move up through that field anymore? Like, do those?
It's such an interesting question, right? Because say of that like 6 to 7 women that might be going for the win, like one of them's gonna have a bad day from the gun.
Yeah, for sure.
More than likely, right? So it's like all of a sudden one of them is out.
2 will feel okay.
Yeah, or like they won't feel good early enough to like really stick their nose to it, so they automatically fall back. They might have a great second half, but they automatically almost fall back into that top 5 group because they just don't feel great early on.
Yeah.
And then one of them is gonna blow up at mile 80 because someone's always sitting in that chair at Rocky Chucky or Green Gate.
Yeah.
That reminded me, Brett, of like 2022 CCC or 2023 CCC, where there were a lot of female athletes who thought they were running a pace that historically would get them in the top 10, but like the in that year the sport evolved like.
Oh yeah,
2X.
I mean Abby PR'd by I don't know
Hannah
how
Allgood
much.
too,
It was-
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a bunch of women, like a bunch of people were using splits that like were no longer valid, basically. That was the Blondine, Sunmaya, Abby Hall podium year, and that was just like stupid evolution in like a very short period.
I think like this field is fortunate to have splits from last year to see, like, just a reminder that 10th place being 18 hours, entirely plausible. So don't look at 19 hour
no
splits
no one's
thinking it's
running
top 10.
20-hour or 19-hour splits that want the top 10. Every single woman in that elite field is looking at like 18-hour base splits.
Yeah.
And probably looking a bit hungrier at 17 and a half, 16:30. How crazy.
So fast.
This is kind of switching topics, but I want to address a comment in the chat. Elon David says, would be interesting to talk about the sponsor distribution in the elite field as an indication of which brands are really investing in Western states every year. Corrine, I know you are with Terex, and obviously Terex has a really impressive showing here this year. What other brands do you see as really significantly investing in the women's field?
I feel like,
We can go
honestly, the
through.
notable miss, I think, is Solomon on the women's side. So we've
Lottie Brinks, I think,
is the one Solomon athlete. So you've got
like Solomon
North America.
Yeah.
So you've got North Face represented. You've got Hoka represented. You've got Kraft represented. Adidas Terex represented. Lululemon represented. Solomon.
We're missing Brooks too.
Casey not having a sponsor is a crime.
That's honestly
Just BT dubs.
kind of insane.
PT Dubs.
Like-
running. I mean, Anna Cassius, unsponsored.
Yeah.
Carathon Arts Ultra. So I do think that we have a pretty even distribution. I would say Hoka probably has the most, maybe tied with Adidas Terex at 3 and 3, I think is what I'm guesstimating here. Or maybe Hoka's got 4 and we have 3. Talking with my we voice. I mean, Becca Wendell unsponsored.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of women that have a podium threat, have a top 10 threat. That this might be actually, we might have more unsponsored athletes in the top 10 on the women's side than we've ever seen before.
Because yesterday Brett and I were talking on the men's side, we were thinking this is going to be the first
I think
year
there'll
where
be 0.
everybody in the top 10 is a pro. Or is
Versus on
sponsored.
the women's side, that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
No,
Like I think that there's I think there's a number of women who are unsponsored. Lauren Puretz, she's Air Vipa,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
right? So it's like, yeah, Lauren Puretz, Becca Wendell, Casey Lichtag, like those are talented athletes sticking their nose in it who are virtually, I mean, Priscilla Forgy is a Norda
like
athlete.
Norda.
and the apparel company, I can't remember. Soar?
So it's like this
Soar,
really
yes.
interesting, like there's a very interesting dynamic here of, Anna Cassius, Loden, Cassius is her maiden name. That's how like she is in my head
Yeah, good luck.
indefinitely.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Remembering that.
I'll just say nay Cassius the entire time. But we've got a number of unsponsored athletes or kind of nationally sponsored athletes who I think will be in the top 10 this year, which is maybe a first. I don't think there was anyone unsponsored in the women's top 10 last year.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about like it's exciting because it's like, oh, who's gonna be the one to like jumpstart their career getting into the top 10? But it's like
They should
there
already
should
be
be more
sponsored.
sponsors here. Yeah, like it shows just
what's
a
going on?
massive imbalance
This is
between
how
the men's and the women's.
This is how I
field.
lose a contract. I do. I think it does speak to that continued imbalance, the growth of the women's sport, but the continued imbalance between the men's side of the sport and the women's side of the sport, where we are seeing women not nail down, not lock down contracts. And part of that is probably education, us like putting them in contact with the right people. And I don't think there's that much gatekeeping in the professional side of the sport. Like I think a lot of us really work very hard to try to help people out, put them in contact with folks, et cetera. A lot of those women that are stepping up kind of have had a burner of a 2024. And unfortunately, like mid-year contracts just don't happen very often. So, it's kind of a shame. We saw this last year with Anthony Costalis.
He was the lone unsponsored.
And so
male in the
for
top 10.
him, like he ran that unsponsored and did come away with the sponsorship after the fact.
Yeah.
Probably should have happened after Black Canyon. But I do think just given the timeline of sponsor contracts happening, most of those conversations start to happen kind of after Western States. They happen in the
Who's
July,
getting paid?
August, September.
Who's getting paid after?
Oh, some people are going to get paid after
Yeah,
this.
this race does open up doors. That's
100%.
definitely
being
a way
top
to
10
look
here,
at it.
putting yourself out there here, definitely. Particularly, I think if you can get a top 5 here,
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at a contract, maybe not a mid-season contract, but you're in conversations with people going into the fall to be on a contract for 2025.
Yeah, I mean, and especially if there's people who are sponsored that are finishing behind you.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
You have like factual data, like hello,
I'm forever the
company,
help.
Look at this.
I'm like, please destroy me.
This is there's a story from CCC a couple years ago. Our friend Caleb Olson was running, and he was unsponsored at the time, and he was in a pack with like Chris Brown, Patty O'Leary, etc. Maybe 40 miles into the race, and everyone just like looks at Caleb and they're like, "Man, I don't feel so good." And Caleb's like, "Why? Like, what's going on?" It's like, "Because I have no idea who you are, and you're with us this deep into the race."
It's like Nick Handel, right?
Exactly.
Second American last year, just outside of the top 10 at OCC. Just a dude. Just a guy. They're
Sold my business.
and
Gonna
they-
try this running thing out.
That happens. Yeah, it turns out that there are people that like support their own running, right? Becca Wendell is doing a PhD right now, but most of these people have jobs and they support their running via other means or what have you. So I think that it's
I'm not
it's evolving.
unsponsored. I'm self-sponsored.
I'm self-sponsored.
I'm unattached.
Honestly, I'm kind of into it. So I do think that this will open doors for people. I do think that we'll see maybe more people than usual in the women's side in particular, unsponsored, finishing in the top 10. I hope that changes things for folks. But yeah, it's a battle, and it's just like getting people in front of the right humans to get kits on them and have support for years to come.
And as this live stream gets better and there's more just airtime for these brands.
Yeah, where you're not just seeing stills of runners.
No, I mean we're going to be seeing like hours of camera footage of like some nondescript singlet, and the brand's gonna be like, "Dang, we're losing out."
Yeah,
on dollars
we
right
should
now.
have our logo should be on this human.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree with that, and I think that.
Who's
we got
who's
Tara
picking
Dixon.
up the Wonder Bread sponsorship for next year?
Me, hopefully.
Yeah.
I'll
Wonder
take
Bread,
it.
Taco Bell. Like,
Yeah.
Give me the NASCAR jacket.
A Wonder Bread
I-
collab.
I'll wear a
and
full leather jacket at Western States next year if it's just plastered with sponsors. Like I will race in it.
NASCAR. Here we come.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Finn. We digress. Keep us on track here.
Well, no, I want to
Don't
do it.
let
I want to
that-
do
Buy
it.
or sell.
I wanna do
leather
a did you
jackets
know.
at Western States.
I want to do a did you know.
Okay.
This is a Liam Aid Station Fireball stat, and this is actually a question to you, Corrine and Brett. Based on data from the last 5 years of golden ticket racing, which golden ticket race has the highest conversion of winners into top 10 finishes at Western States? This one kind of shocked me.
I'm going Canyons.
Yeah, you don't want it to be Canyons because it's so close to the race. But,
I know.
But that wouldn't surprise me. I want it to be Black Canyon in my head because that feels more logical.
Yeah.
Black Canyon did pretty good last year.
Bandera.
Dang.
Bandera. So the top
Rest
three.
in peace, Bandera, as a golden ticket race.
R.I.P.
Bandera, Canyons, Black Canyon.
Wow.
So 2018, Camille Herron, Anna Haley. 19, Brittany Peterson and Lottie Albertson-Junkins. Ailsa McDonald and Michelle Magnana in 2020. Katie Asmuth and Aaron Clark in 21. 22 was Marianne Hogan and Ellie Pell. 23 was Courtney DeWalter and Nicole Bitter.
Yeah.
That's actually like the most hot cold like series of golden tickets because it was like, oh yeah, went on to win. Like I don't know if started the race or finished.
like Aaron
boom,
didn't start,
boom,
et cetera.
boom,
Yeah.
boom.
3 podiums, Brittany, Marianne, Courtney, and then a race win, Courtney. Yeah.
Dang.
That's wow. Bandera.
R.I.P.
Wow. I hope the board's watching.
Yeah.
That was an awesome stat, Liam.
Craig,
Thank you.
Toph,
Bring back Bandera.
Dylan. Bring back Bandera. That is a great. Did you know? I loved too. Aid Station Fireball called out that Ann Trayson also won on her 10th and 11th and 12th and.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So it's
never
been
again.
done before where someone has won Western States on their 10th try. Also, another wild stat was it took Tim Tweetmeyer 11 tries to get his first win. So he had already run the race 10 times and then he won it. That's never happening again.
Yeah. That's
No.
Nah.
That's never happening again.
no. You could basically sign up race day. I'm pretty
because
sure back
that
then.
means you're like in the top 10 every year to get your
back.
10 tries. And if you're consistently in the top 10, but you're not inching closer towards winning on a very steep base, you're probably not going to win.
So we said this in the men's preview. We should say it here. There is an infinite list of female runners that could have an amazing day, and we're likely not going to name drop or cover all of them. It doesn't mean that we're not high on them or thinking that they're going to be successful. It's just we can talk for 5 hours.
Yeah, no, Finn explicitly told us that we weren't allowed to just name drop the entire field, that we were supposed to keep things concise and tight.
But are there any other people, Corrine or Brett, that you want to acknowledge? Maybe one or two more people?
I think I
before
already
we-
named my 9, man.
Yeah, you did. How about you, Brett? Anyone?
You
I
know,
got
a
one.
runner who I'm just stoked to see back in the race because I feel like they were part of somewhat of a shift in the sport on a team side and media side of things is Sally McRae.
Yeah, back on a sponsor spot this year.
Yeah, and you know Sally, the Western Time
10
video.
years, 10-year anniversary of Western Times.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite Billy films. If you haven't seen Western Time, go watch it at some point this week.
Get stoked.
Yeah, get stoked. You're gonna cry.
The highest highs, the lowest lows.
Yeah, and Sally was on the part of that Nike Trail team that
Yeah, kind of
sparked some
started
sort
that.
of a renaissance in American trail running. So that was a name I had written down for just like a cool to see back
That's
on the
a good
start
one.
line.
That's a really good one. I got Ragnar DeBots. I know we've talked about her a little bit,
Yeah,
but
someone's calling her the dark horse for the win. I was like, Ragna's like the Masters course record holder, and that was what, 2021,
2021.
Not that long ago.
Yeah.
and ran a 17:41. I remember helping like carry her daughter over the barrier, and she was like so sleep deprived and little, and was just like holding like one flower for her mom. It was very, very cute.
And she ran an amazing race at Javelina. She still
Yeah.
got it.
That was really, really cool to see her put it together
Yeah.
at Javelina, being like, okay, I mean, this has been a woman who every time you saw her on the start list for years, independent of distance, you know, we're talking world champion, we're talking like an amazing kind of short to long distance trail runner.
Mhm.
You couldn't count her out for the win.
Yeah.
If she's on the
in
start
the
list-
race. Yeah.
Like, she's probably going to destroy you.
Meryl.
Meryl. I was just going to say Meryl.
To go with the wide
Oh, yeah, we totally talked
variety
about
of
sponsorship.
I love seeing not everyone sponsored by the same brand. You know, like we've seen that it's getting better in like the track and field world, but before it was just like everyone's Nike and then there's a couple Adidas. That was it. I love that we have, you know, like 8 or 9 different shoe brands just across our notes.
Yeah, across the women's top 25. I think that's cool. And just to speak about the women's field in general, I think there are 99 women in the race currently. That's 27% of the start field, which is awesome. It's the highest we've ever had for the percent of starters being women. They range in age from 23 to 65, I want to say. Betsy Kalmeyer being the silver legend entry at 63 years old.
And this is Betsy's first Western
Yeah,
States.
she's run 21 Hard Rocks, but it's her first Western States.
21.
And then the youngest athlete being a 23-year-old out of Canada, I believe. And then we've got 14 countries also represented across the women's entrance pool, which is very, very cool.
Global.
Global women domination.
That's cool.
Last two things we got to cover. The first is our bold predictions for this race. And I'll start. I think I said one of them earlier. I believe the entire women's top 10 is going under 1750. And I think the podium is going under 17 hours.
I get to go to bed early if that happens, and that is kind of exciting.
So those are mine.
What about you, Brett?
I did this with the men's preview episode yesterday where I was like, I don't see the top 10 going faster than last year's top 10. Like, I think it's still going to be
18-ish.
I think it'll be a tighter spread than last year, partly due to just the Courtney effect. So I think the top 10 will be faster, but I don't think 10th will be faster than 18:11 from last year.
Yeah, what are we saying, I guess, for spread, right? Like that, I feel like that was pretty tight on the men's side last year.
90 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see I think you got to be within 90 minutes of the win to be top 10 this year.
Yeah, I think the women's spread goes down a huge amount.
Yeah, I
for this
think
year.
it's going to be real. I think it's going to be tight racing, that is what we want, right?
Yeah.
We want to put 30 women on the start line that are all mega talented, because then, you know, can you imagine like 10 women rolling into I haven't said Cormier to Robinson Flat together? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think we see that.
Like, I think we're going to start. I think we see more and
Yeah.
more that we see these packs. I think you might see one or two, a small pack maybe flying off the front, but I think we're going to see big pack racing again this year, which is what we saw last year in a really mega way, where we had like, I think like 3rd through 8th in Forest Hill at the same time, like all being crewed at different spots on Cal Street. You weren't sure who was where or what was happening.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure we had like most of the women's top 10 on Cal Street at the same time.
So here's a fun rehearsal. You're going to be in
Losing
the
my
studio. I will be at Robinson Flat. We are both going to be on the live stream. You know, Corrine will probably say something like, Brett, how's it going at Robinson Flat? And I'm going to sound like a damn auctioneer, just being like, through Robinson Flat.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be like, cool, that was like the warning label read on like a prescription commercial where it's just like incredibly
Every side effect.
hyper speed. Yeah. No, I do think we're gonna see that. I think that my bold prediction this year is that since we're gonna relive the Camilla Mayfield, Caitlin Gerben throwdown, and we're gonna see we're gonna see 2 women on the track at the same time this year. I don't know what place they're going to be in, but we're going to see 2 women on the track at the same time.
Was the year that Caitlin and Camelia sprinted for the finish, was that the year that there was also construction on the track and they had to do that like weird
I don't
thing?
think so.
They got a true 300.
It was a true 300, I
Was
think.
it 2019?
I think it was 2019.
Yeah.
And
okay.
then I will say, and so we saw, Tyler Green and Arlen Glick on the track at the same time when Tyler was 4th.
Yes.
22.
22, that's right.
Yeah.
And then there was the year when like Browning and Kyle Pietari and like Cody Reed. There was like 4 guys
Kyle
in the
and
back half
Cody.
of the top 10.
Yeah. No, like that was the year that Tyler Green finished 12th or something. Was like Ian Sharman. They all dropped their pacers.
Yeah.
Like they all dropped their pacers from Roby Point to the finish because they were just going for broke. I think actually Rachel Drake was pacing Tyler at that point and she didn't feel good. And Tyler's like, it's okay. We don't have to go. We're not going to get it done. And she was like, no, we have to go. Like, leave me. Like, you have to go. So I do think that we're going to see, my bold prediction is that we'll see 2 women on the track at the same time this year.
I love that one. That's good. And then we also need your predictions. So who's winning and what's your podium?
I hate this.
And we will give you an out. So it's Tuesday. Obviously, things can change as the week progresses.
This is true. I might see someone and be like, dang, they're going to win this thing.
Yeah.
They might give me a hug and I'll be like, ooh, good indicator. Good indicator of what's going to happen. I mean, I think that I'd be remiss to not put Katie Schide as my number 1. If I could put her 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I probably would. I think that her stock is high. And then I think to kind of continue the thread of like folks who I think are continuing to improve here, and also the wild card mentality of like debutantes coming in. My 1, 2, 3 is going to be currently today. I hope none of them are listening to this.
Don't quote me on. No one in the elite field should be watching this
No.
show.
Yeah, you better not be. And if you
turn it off right now.
Go to bed right now. I would say that, Katie Schide. I'm going to put Rachel Drake and Emily Hawgood on my podium.
I like that. That's a good podium.
How many women in the top 10 overall?
I think that's interesting because I do think the men's field is really, really good this year too. And I think that they are a smarter men's field than we have seen in some years. Like 2021, the men were just straight up bad. Like, I'm so sorry, guys. You guys, it was bad. It's not good.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, I think
That
I was
was
quoted
pretty
in
bad.
the New York Times as saying the men were bad. Like, weren't going to compare the women to the men because the men were just not good.
Yeah.
I think that we're not going to see 3 in like we saw in 2021. Or do we have 4 in that year? That might have been the record year. I think we might have had 4. I'm saying that particularly if Katie Schide's on a burner, for example, it might only be 1 or 2. Courtney Dauwalter, when she's won, she's oftentimes been like 12th, for example, because I do think that Adam Kimball has finished 13th overall, but 12th man twice in the 2 years that he's run it, with the top woman being like 11th or 12th. So I think that we're going to get 1, maybe 2 women in the top 10, but I do think I've got faith in our men's top 10 kind of keeping it a bit more together this year.
Love it.
I'm putting a lot of faith in them though, so we'll see.
Brett, do you have any final thoughts, any final comments you want to make?
Let me go back to my notes. I was just peeping the 2021 results. There was 3 women in the top 10.
And that might have been a tie for the most ever.
Mm-hmm.
It was like back to an earlier cold year or something, or when Ann Trayson was like second overall.
Yeah, she was battling with Tweetmeyer one year for the overall win.
Come on, Ann. So yeah, so I think that we see 1 in. I would love to see more in, but I would
Mhm.
also like I've got some skin in the game in the men's race, and I would really
Yeah.
like them to do well. So
Yeah, we're
I'm-
battling it out again.
yeah, it's on. So I'm hopeful that like the men keep it together as well, and that we see 1 to 2 women in the top 10.
I think the last thing I'll say is just my other prediction is that I'm trying to think of which brand is going to be most represented in the top 10 on the women's side this year.
There's a lot of different brands.
I think based on sheer volume coming in, it's likely going to be Hoka or Adidas.
Yeah.
Because I think we're 4 and 3.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool
3 and 3.
if the number of unsponsored in the top 10 was
Was the
greater than
most.
any individual brand, was the most.
That'd be
Yeah,
sick.
that would be really cool.
I think the year
That could happen
My
this year.
first year running Western States in 2018, I was a Solomon athlete, and we had 4 women in the top 10.
Wow.
I think that was the most. We were by far the most of that brand represented that year,
Yeah.
because I think we were first, 4th, 8th, and 9th. First, 3rd, 8th, and 9th.
Okay.
Something like that. Courtney, Lucy, Eliza LaPierre, and I were all in the top 10 that year.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
Very cool.
someone beat us. Come on, let's go.
Well, Corrine, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We really appreciate your time. I'll give you the last word. Anything that you want to leave the audience with before we go?
I guess if you're going to be in Olympic Valley this week, I can soft tease this now. We've got a really cool initiative coming out with the PTRA, the Women's Working Group, the Equality Group. We're launching a fund this fall for female creators and female athletes to give out grants starting in 2025. We're launching shirts this week that are really cool. So if you're on site in Olympic Valley, you can find us at TrailCon, the happy hour Wednesday night, and you can find us at the Hoka Shakeout Run Thursday morning, as well as the Free Trail Happy Hour Thursday afternoon for some sick t-shirts. All those donations go to the fund to hopefully share more of these stories, because we want to elevate the women's field, elevate their stories, and get more of them out there.
Yeah.
So come see us so that we can flood the race course on Saturday with these really epic t-shirts.
Kelly Benedetti, if I pronounced that correctly, you are the winner of the Brooks Cascadia 18 shoes. Email me, finn@singletrack.run. We will get you those shoes. We also have a group run Wednesday, 8 a.m. That's tomorrow morning at the Granite Chief Trailhead next to the Village Event Center here in Olympic Valley. Ton of giveaways, Brooks products, Knack products, Rabbit products, etc. See you there at 8 a.m. Thank you so much, everybody. We will see you later today.